Today's video is about the Halo Elite 4 burner, a video that a lot of people have been requesting lately. I've reviewed the Halo smokers, I've done some videos on the griddle, but I've never done the review on it, and I wanted to get some really hands-on time, and I've been cooking with it for just about a year now. So that gives me a much better handle on how this grill actually works, how it functions, the best way to cook with it, and what I really enjoy about it, and what some of its weaknesses are. And if you've watched my channel for any length of time, this may come as a surprise to you, but if I could only have one type of grill, it would absolutely be a griddle. Griddles to me are just so much fun to cook with, no matter what kind of griddle you have. And Halo did send everything to me. They sent me the griddles, the 4 burner and the 2 burner to make review content for you. And they also sent the cooking utensils that I use in the videos as well, but they did not sponsor this video, no money changed hands, and they don't get to see this review before it's published. Now, I've had the 2 burner and the 4 burner, and I can honestly tell you that if you're a family of 4, a 2 burner will be just fine. It is much larger than you think as far as a 2 burner griddle goes, but as soon as I got the 4 burner, all bets were off. This thing is amazing, and it is a beast. So if you're thinking about getting the 2 burner, the 3 burner, or the 4 burner, also comes in a 1 burner, I would just save your money and go for the 4 burner because you're gonna want that extra real estate. I promise you, it's fun to cook with. One awesome thing that's happening right now at the time of publishing this video is all Halo products are 15% off across the board. So this $1,000 griddle is 15% off, a pretty great deal for a griddle that will surpass all other ones, and I'm gonna tell you why. First, I wanna talk about the actual griddle top itself. That's the most important part, other than the burners. We'll tackle that second. But the griddle top for the Halo griddle, drink every time I say griddle, okay? The griddle top is made of hot rolled steel. Now, my very first griddle was a Blackstone. Before I had my YouTube channel, I had a Blackstone 4 burner griddle, and it was good. The wind always blew out the flames. It was an earlier model than what they make now, so things have changed for Blackstone, but not a lot. That was cold rolled steel. And then I upgraded to the Camp Chef griddle, which you may have seen in some of my previous videos. And I loved the Camp Chef griddle. And that was also cold rolled steel. But one thing that you'll find with cold rolled steel is if it gets too hot, or if you preheat it too quickly from cold to hot, you will get a jump in it, and it will scare the shit out of you. The griddle top will actually warp and go poof and buckle because those rivets that hold it together underneath, they break apart from the welds, and then the griddle top will just warp on you, and then you'll be left with a bent griddle. And it's happened to so many people across the board. I can honestly tell you that that will not happen with hot rolled steel. It is a totally different product, and Halo is the only one at the time of making this video that has a hot rolled steel griddle surface. It is much more similar to cast iron in its properties. So it's going to hold heat much longer. You're going to be able to get it much hotter, and we'll talk about that too. That seems to be a complaint that someone had recently, was the level of heat that this thing gets to, but I'm gonna tell you how to handle that. You can also cook with the lid down, which is so important, especially in colder months and in windier temperatures, but it's also super important for preheating. So you can close your griddle top, preheat your griddle on high, which I never recommend you doing with a cold rolled steel griddle, but you can preheat this on high, get it ripping hot in 7 minutes. That is unheard of, okay? In griddles, like every griddle that I've ever had, the Pit Boss, the Camp Chef, or the Blackstone, preheating on high you can't do, number one, so it's just gonna take longer to heat up. On low, and you're gonna be going in 15 minutes to get a nice even cook surface on a griddle top, especially in colder temperatures. In colder temperatures, it might not heat up at all, depending on the wind. So, and I did test the 2 burner out in 40-mile-per-hour winds, 30-degree temperatures, and in a snowstorm. I cooked steak, I cooked fries, I had a great meal in a snowstorm on a griddle, which is pretty much unheard of, especially in our neck of the woods where our wind is absolutely nuts in the wintertime. That's the griddle top. It's hot rolled steel. You will get the best griddle top you can get with the Halo. Now let's talk about the burners. There are 8 burners, and you can cook in just half of them or all of them at the same time, and they all run independently. So if you just wanna have 1 burner on, you can have 1 burner on. Or if you wanna have 2 on, 2 off, you can do that. The interesting part is this function right here. If you turn it to here, you're only turning on the front part of the burner. But if you turn it all the way down here, now you're on high, cooking on the full level of the burner, and now you're just cooking on high throughout the whole power of the burner, which is 12,000 BTUs per burner set, and you're running at 48,000 BTUs total when you're ripping on high. Another great little function is if you're wondering if your flame had been blown out or anything, which in most cases it won't. 40-mile-per-hour winds didn't blow it out, so I'm not saying it won't get blown out, but it's unlikely that in most cooking scenarios, you're not really cooking in a windstorm. But if you do wonder if your flame is out, check through this little peephole and you can see your fire blazing. The propane regular has 2 different settings, which I had never actually heard of before, to be honest with you. One is an 11-inch column and one is a 9.5-inch column. Now, what does that mean? So when you have it set to the 11-inch column, which is pushed in, you're getting the full blast of the propane to get your griddle as hot as it will go to execute that 48,000 BTUs at its full strength. Now, if you want to pull it out to that 9.5-inch column, you will get less propane, so less gas, less fuel, and you'll run at a lower temperature. So I actually have done both. I don't have a problem with running at the 11-inch column, and I'm gonna tell you why. One really interesting thing when you start getting into griddling is that a really great way to cook, and maybe the best way to cook, certainly my favorite way to cook on a griddle top, is with a gradient heat zone. So I have a really hot zone, and then it gradually gets cooler onto the other side of the griddle. Okay? Say I have this one on high, this one on medium, this one on low, this one all the way off. And that way I can cook lower temperature foods like eggs, pancakes, whatever, on the lower temperature parts of the griddle. I can cook meats and proteins and get a nice sear up here around 500 degrees, 450 degrees. And when we're cooking like that, you really can give things a rest from the heat. And when you notice that they need some more heat, you just shift them over. So it's a really fun way to cook. And that's probably why I like cooking on the griddle the most, is because it's just fun. I think I said this when I compared the Camp Chef to the Blackstone griddle many, many years ago. They're just fun to cook on. So if you're thinking about getting a griddle, I would highly recommend you get a griddle. Whether it's this one or not, whether it's a Blackstone or Camp Chef or Pit Boss or Weber or anybody, Traeger makes one, get a griddle. I promise you, you're not gonna be unsatisfied with it. Now, I talked briefly about that windproof design. You can't really call it windproof. I mean, you get a 60-mile-an-hour gust, it's probably gonna blow out your flames, but just hit the igniter and it's gonna start right back up again. But I will attest, the Camp Chef griddle was excellent in windy situations, but this griddle is far superior to what the Camp Chef was. The griddle is set in to the cooking surface instead of sitting on top. Everything sits in and it vents out the back here. So like I said, very, very good in the wind, and I have tested it. The griddle top does come unseasoned. Really simple process. Clean it off with some soap and water, add some oil of your choice, get it ripping on high, and you're just gonna put a thin coat. You want a thin coat of oil each time and brush it in with maybe an old t-shirt or something, or a shop towel, less lint kind of towels, you know what I mean? So rub that oil in and let that oil actually burn off. You'll see it smoke. That's a good thing. You're polymerizing that oil on top of the surface, creating that non-stick type of surface. You wanna do that 3 or 4 times. It's really simple. It takes about 15 minutes for each coat, and you're good to go. So after about 45 minutes of doing your seasoning, you're ready to cook. And one of the first things I highly recommend you cook are onions, and cook them low and slow. The onions contain sulfur, and what happens when the sulfur reacts with the heat in the griddle surface is that creates a bond to the actual seasoning and makes it even stronger. So a really great thing to do after you get your griddle seasoned is to cook a whole shitload of onions. And then, you know, throw some bacon on there, cook some burgers, cook some steaks, cook whatever you want and have fun. Let's talk about the heat. As a few other people have noted, the Halo griddle is the hottest griddle that you can buy under $1,000. There are some griddles, commercial style griddles that you can get that obviously go a little higher than that. At 700 degrees max temp, you are searing some steaks really nicely. Now, controlling those temps is a lot easier than you think. It just takes some getting used to. Just like any new tool that you get, they all have their little quirks and differences and different ways of being used. And like I mentioned, the gradient cooking surface, that's a great way to do it. If you notice that your griddle's getting too hot, and you will notice it because you'll feel it, okay? If it's too hot, to put your hand over here like this, and you're like, ooh, that's really hot. That's too hot to cook most things. If you're cooking proteins, it's great. Too hot for eggs, too hot for pancakes, of course, and pretty much anything light like that. So just crank your burners off. And what you'll get used to is you'll notice when some zones start to get too hot, shift to your colder zones, because we're gonna cook on that gradient heat surface, but also just turn your burner off and let it cool. It'll take about 3 to 4, maybe 5 minutes to get that zone cool again, and then you're shifting again. So it's just a matter of getting used to turning knobs off, turning them on, and cooking. But I'm telling you, when you get used to cooking with super hot heat to lower heat at the same time, it is a ton of fun, and you're really cooking, my friends. Let's talk about the warming rack. Now, I've never had a griddle with a warming rack. None of the griddles that I've ever had one. And so when I saw that this one had one, I'm like, oh, this is super great. So it hooks right into these little holes in the griddle here, hooks into here, and then when you shut the griddle top, it rotates so that it stays there. It also, you can pull out these and hook it right into here, into this section here, and then you can have your warming rack away and out of the way so it's not covering this area here. One thing to note, if you're going to cook greasier foods, like sometimes bacon or something like that. You cook bacon, you get it done, you put it up on a warming rack to stay warm. You can get some grease that will go over because the warming rack, the way it's designed, sits back a little bit, and you can get some grease to run down the back trap there. So if you're gonna do some things, I think I saw the Flat Top King do something where he smoked something. I don't know if it was a brisket or not, but he smoked some kind of meat up top and the juices ran down the back of his griddle. Not great, but it's a warming rack. It's not a cooking surface. So I would use it as such, but that doesn't mean if you're gonna have burgers and put them up here that you might get some grease drippage down there. So just be careful of the placement of where you put greasier foods on the warming rack. Other than that, the warming rack has been a blessing to our cooking, especially when things get too hot. Like I mentioned, if things get too hot, put it up on the warming rack while it cools down. The other thing this is a tiny complaint that I have is with the grease management system, and that's what we're gonna talk about right now. The grease management system shoots out the back. Now, I had the Camp Chef before that, and you pull it towards you. I liked that because at our old house, we had white siding. And when I had the griddle up toward, it was aluminum siding. And when I had the griddle up towards that, pushing the grease back, because it didn't have a lid, pushing the grease back, it would make some splatters on the siding. So pulling it forward was actually one of the biggest reasons I bought the Camp Chef before. Now that we don't have that issue, pushing it out the back is different. But one thing you'll notice is it's wide open, right? So they sell these things separately. They're little grease traps so you can see the holes underneath. You definitely want to add these to your purchase. There was one time where I was cooking on the 2-burner and I had it loaded with steak and salmon. I was doing like a steak and seafood kind of thing. And I went to scoop a piece of salmon up to flip it, and when I scooped it, the griddle surface was so slick, it just shot out the back and went right into the grease trap. So user error on my part, yes, but I did lose an entire piece of salmon into the grease trap because I wasn't pulling it out of the grease trap, let me tell you. So just to note, that grease trap is wide open back there, but I do prefer it now pushing away from me as opposed to pulling it towards me. I think it was just a difference of getting used to it. You know, you do one thing for so long and then all of a sudden you change. But I do kind of prefer it now. My clothes thank me. I'm not getting grease splattered on my clothes if I'm not wearing an apron, so that's nice. The grease trap itself is awesome. I never thought I would say that, but like this thing, I mean, this is full of grease right now. We just had my 2-year-old's birthday party over the weekend and I cooked 40 cheeseburgers on here, so this thing's pretty full right now. But I mean, that is a big old grease trap. Halo thought of this. It's a giant one, and this is the same size that it comes with every single one of their units, except for their portable smoker. So it's the same exact one, and it's just on a hinge system, so you can just dump it right out. Now you can also get like little metal containers to put inside so you don't have to clean it, but personally, I think those are kind of a waste of money. Speaking of being covered, so it comes with a lid, it comes with a beefy lid. The Halo griddle is the only griddle on the market right now, as the time of publishing this video, that Halo actually says you can cook with the lid down. Like I said in the beginning, you can absolutely preheat your griddle with this lid down. One caveat to that I mentioned in my wind and snow test is that if you preheat on high with the lid down for too long, you can damage your seasoning because it will get so hot with the lid down, obviously, that the seasoning will get too hot and you could scorch your seasoning. So just note, give it 7 to 10 minutes with the lid down on a normal temperature day. It's pretty nice today, it's about 70. So 7 to 10 minutes max just to preheat your griddle with the lid down. Beautiful design on the lid. Got the halo flame emblazoned on the top. That's cool. And everything being stainless steel and black. Really nice aesthetics. And then you've got your halo green aesthetics too, which I really like the pop. The magnetic level. To level your griddle, put it on there. I personally like to level horizontally, but I like to angle backward towards the grease trap so that the grease just naturally runs towards the grease trap. Some people don't like that. Some people like a fully leveled griddle surface, and that's totally fine. So that preference is totally up to you. You do you. But that's fantastic that it comes with that and they give you that option. And then when you're not using it, it just pops right in there. Pretty sweet. The shelves are nice shelves. They're metal shelves. They feel a little thin, but they only feel thin because of the way that this functions, where you can pick it up and you can fold down your shelves. So there's actually a big gap between these screws, and the screws they rattle there a little bit. But once it's on, it's solid. So that's, I mean, if I'm complaining about that, I mean, let's be honest, that's not a very big complaint. But the shelves are very nice, they're wide. I do wish they were a little bit longer, like maybe like out to here. These hooks have these little notches and they slide into here to hook on so you can hang your metal utensils. The Halo utensils are also magnetic, so they just stick right in here. So a nice little feature for their accessories is that they are magnetic and you can just slide them on here. But I will say that the heavier ones, like the bigger hamburger spatula, can slide off because it's so heavy. So put it on higher and you should be okay, or just hang it from the hook. The other reason they have these hooks is so that you can pick up your griddle. And this is pretty fantastic. There's 2 little holes on each side of the griddle top. You put it in there, and then you can lift up your griddle. I'm not gonna do it right now because the warming rack is connected to it, but you can lift it up and then you can carry it, and then you can fold this up and store it away a little easier without that big heavy griddle top in there. But very nice feature and just a cool little thing. My complaint is that, and this happens with the smoker too, the pellet grill, is that when I remove the cover, which I'll talk about next, when I remove the cover always snags on here, and then it pulls them off, and then they fall on the ground. It's like every time I go to lift it off. I've said this in my other Halo videos, their covers are second to none. They're not just a soft cover that's just a little rain deflector thing. They actually have padding in them, like Kevlar vests. Not Kevlar, but you know what I'm saying. So every Halo cover to their grills has a padded surface, okay? So, and the reason for that is to protect it from hail, things like that. So I haven't had the griddle out in a hailstorm, but I did have my smoker out on the patio during a hailstorm last summer. And the padded top protected it. There was not a single dent or anything in the stainless steel top, which is fantastic. So if you get one of these griddles and maybe you live in an area where you have some inclement weather, maybe hail, I highly recommend you get the cover for them. It slides on like this, just slides over there. This has a built-in cover that covers the grease trap. Even though the grease trap already has a cover on it, that's for when you're cooking, but now this is totally covered from the elements, so you're not gonna get a grease trap full of rainwater or snow or whatever else it is. So really great covers made by Halo. Cart that all of the Halo products sit on is called the X cart. Now I have built 5 of these now. They're kind of a pain to build. They're not hard, they're just tedious, okay? But the X carts are very well built, they're very solid. The casters that it comes with are the best casters that I've had on any grill. And I've said this before, they're like rollerblade wheels. I've pushed them through the dirt, I've pushed them all through all sorts of stuff. So very durable casters, and the propane tank sits right on the back, and they've got a little notch that's the bottom of the propane tank sits on, as well as a metal bar that clips onto the top of the propane tank. I do wish that the propane hose was maybe an inch longer. It's like the perfect length to attach to your propane tank. I mean, it's like perfect. Like as soon as you get it cranked all the way tight on your propane tank, that's all the slack you've got. So I do wish maybe there was another hinge, but also I'm just complaining about the tiniest of things that really nobody else would really complain about. If you don't want to use the X-Cart, maybe you've got an outdoor kitchen or a table that you want to set this on, it comes with legs. So if you ever want to take it off the X-Cart, there's 4 screws, one on each side and 2 on the back. Pull off those screws, lift it with a buddy, maybe pull the griddle top out first so it's a little lighter, and lift it with a buddy and put it on a table or you're cooking wherever you're gonna cook it on, and you've got a tabletop griddle. That is fantastic. One of the things that I always say about the Halo products, and I'm just gonna repeat it again, is that they are well-built tanks. They don't cut corners with different things. The complaints that I have are complaints that I have. You know what I mean? Like, they're not complaints about the way it's built and the way it functions. The way it's built is stellar. The way it functions is stellar. So that's it, guys. What do you think of this tank of a hot-ass griddle? I mean, I have had so much fun cooking on it. It is an absolute beast. So friends, I would love to know what you think of the Halo griddle. Are you gonna get the 1 burner, the 2 burner, the 3 burner, the 4 burner? It comes in all 4 of those different sizes. Like I said, the 2 burner is much bigger than you think. So if you've got a family of 4, a 2 burner is gonna be just fine. But if you want that extra real estate, the 4 burner, a lot of fun. So I'd love to know what you guys think. Tell me in the comments, let's talk about it. And if I missed anything or if you have any questions, please let me know. I'd love to talk to you. As always, I appreciate you. Thanks for watching. I'll see you on the next one.